My name's Chris.
And I'm Christy.
No, I'm Christy.
Oh, God, I got two Christies here. This is the Washing Up podcast. Neither of these people are Christy. This is a special, as you will have seen from the title. This is Rebaked. So who are these random Christies, I hear you ask? Well, we happen to have two finalists from the Great Australian Bakeoff, Aaron and Nurman. How are we, gentlemen?
You all right?
You all right?
Yeah,
you okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
sweet. This is going to be far less formal, but what we're doing is something that I actually think is quite cool. So, sans Christy tonight, but this is just something that's a little bit different, a little bit cool, a little bit interesting. We've all obviously been watching, especially me, because you've heard the podcast. Well, I'd hope so at least. Please listen. We've been watching the Great Canadian Baking Show season 6, and obviously this is series 6 from the Great Australian Bake-Off. And I kind of thought to myself, wouldn't it be really interesting? Because every week, and I've mentioned it on the pod, I'm constantly in conversation with Aaron and Nurman about what they're baking. So wouldn't it be interesting to find out each week what they would be doing for these challenges? So what we've done is we've picked either a signature or a showstopper and set them the challenge of what would you bake in their place for all 8 weeks. So before we start, gentlemen, neither of you can start with this. What did we think of the last series of Canadian?
I thought it was brilliant. I genuinely loved each and every baker.
Mm.
I think there were definitely quality bakes and quality bakers.
Mm.
I thought the variety of baking, they're quite adventurous and I loved them. Different flavors that you don't see commonly in a lot of the Bake-Off series.
No
and
tacos.
It was certainly interesting to compare that with a certain other franchise that we also watched.
Yeah, we can talk about British, yes.
Yeah.
He's Nurman tiptoeing around it. Meanwhile, I've been sitting here, obviously, for the entire run of this series of the podcast, beating British with the back of my hand every chance I get.
Yeah, look, I was also watching the latest season of British, and and when I say watching, I mean after a certain point, it was on in the background while I was doing other things.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily that it was bad. It's just when you had Canadian on at the same time, it's
not a fair comparison.
It's not a fair comparison.
You wouldn't want to kill your chance at being in a cameo, though.
Oh no.
Greeting cards or things like that.
Yeah, let's all sign up to cameo.
That's the thing.
It's sign up to cameo and to say happy birthday so and so that you don't really know.
But my favorite, of course, and I keep bringing it up every time we talk about them, but my favorite remains the whole, the front cover of their cookbooks. Where they're looking slightly off, so they're surprised that someone's in the kitchen. So it's the same cover every time. There's a cake in front of them. They're looking slightly off camera, smiling at a person who apparently you can't see, while someone takes a side profile shot of them accidentally. It's amazing. It's right up there with every year when they make someone on MasterChef's opening credits drop something and act surprised they drop something.
It's the British Bake-Off equivalent of a woman laughing while eating salad.
Oh.
So I'm just checking before we start. I am checking how many people from British Bake-Off are on Cameo.
I think 4.
No, oh God, you are.
From this season, I believe 4.
Yeah, but in general. So in general, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19 of them. Yes. And by the way, it is cheaper to get Candace Brown on Cameo than it is to get Sandro. Candace
if the listeners
cheaper.
of the podcast could see the expression on my face. Ugh.
And I'm not going to bag it out too much because friend of the show, friend of the podcast, and just all around good guy, Stephen Carter Bailey is also on there. He's one of the ones. And Stephen's lovely. But Stephen, you've got to admit, it's part of a process.
Do you get deals if you book multiple of them?
I don't know if you get
That'd be interesting.
I mean,
because I know that
singing telegram sort of situation where I don't know,
Andrew-
maybe I have to sing something.
Andrew Smythe, by the way, is also the cheapest out of all of them. Like, and he's judged on Junior Bake Off as well as being on Bake Off and being well regarded. He's significantly cheaper. He's half of Candace Brown's price, and Candace Brown is 2/3 of Sandra. What a market
Andrew-
this is.
Andrew was in Baconeering, that show, isn't he?
Yeah, Andrew's been in a ton of things. So,
Yeah.
like, this
See,
is
that's
the thing.
that's the thing with like the British ones is they get like, you know, that's because it's
what they're there
it's
for.
the original, so you know it has a lot more sort of clout than, you know,
And the
us
fact that-
us colonists.
But the fact that we're spending all of our time when we talk about British, talking about clout, and when we talk about Australian and Canadian, we're talking about baking, and we're talking about actually baking something and quality of bakers and the types of challenges being done. And whenever you talk about a British challenge, all you tend to talk about, especially lately, that infamous Japanese week they did, and then obviously Mexican week.
What
you know.
happened to no, well, not Sandra. What happened to Yanusha's 8th spring roll?
Oh, did you watch
We'll never
Nigel
know.
and Joshua Wiseman sort of roasting that entire Mexican week? That
Yeah.
was hilarious.
Yeah,
Josh
yes.
Weissman roasting Bake
So,
Off.
so it was.
Oh,
on-
Uncle Nigel, yes.
Yeah, it's Uncle
Yes,
Roger. Yeah,
Uncle
Uncle
Nigel.
Roger. Nigel doing
Yes,
Uncle
yes,
Roger.
yes.
I
Nigel,
highly
yeah.
recommend that everybody gets on that. If you haven't watched Uncle Roger, absolutely rip. He did it when Japanese week happened. He did that, and now he's done Mexican week, and it's just beautiful. It's a work of art. But
Emotional damage.
completely.
Emotional damage.
But what we're going to be dealing with isn't going to be cameos or book covers or people trying to get themselves a book deal in general. What we're dealing with is the quality of baking that we've seen across 2 different series. So obviously, and I'm going to talk you two up, and you'll both talk yourselves down, and I don't really care about that.
It's as if you know me.
I do definitely know you. Nurman might talk himself up, but obviously, for those in Canada who haven't got to see Series 6 of the Great Australian Bake Off, first of all, get all over that. Second of all, and far more importantly, these 2 fine gentlemen who are with me tonight were both in the grand final. I'm not going to tell you what happened. Go watch it. But they obviously, therefore, given that we've talked about the fact that Canadian and Australian are a far superior brand, have probably got baking chops that some of these people on Cameo don't. And I'm going to say that, and they're going to sit there and get all, oh, shucks, but it's true.
Look,
So
I'll say what I say whenever somebody at work compliments something I like baked and brought in. I know what I'm about, son.
Whereas Nurman just knows he's that good and will tell you. But
Well,
Go on.
I don't like to follow rules though. I mean, I'm not technically a baker. I'm more of a science.
and that's true. Like so Nurman, before we launch into this, I think the best way we've sort of got to sum both of your baking skills up for the people that don't know. I'm going to start with Nurman, because if I start with Aaron and then go to Nurman, it's going to feel like weaning a child off breast milk and onto port. So we're going to start with the high end first, and then the ridiculous nature of Nurman. The nature of Nurman was irrepressible, much like the nature of Monkey, and then we will come back to Aaron. So Nurman, just to sort of help everybody out, what have you been baking lately? Give us some ideas.
So, I've been into using the same ingredient multiple times. So I did a corn bake with, I counted, it was not 20 components. It was actually 22 corn components in that one
Oh my
bake.
God.
Nurman doesn't know about you, but he was feeling 22.
Well, 22 is a good number. And then there is the shock horror type of baking that I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there is
You can talk about it. Go for it.
Okay, pig's blood red velvet cake.
Now, to just, by the way, for people who are going, oh, he just sort of baked this at home and didn't take it public. No. Nurman took it very public. So how did the taste testing go on ABC radio?
I think they were pleasantly surprised at the ABC radio. I said, "Oh well, can you guess the ingredient?" And
Guess what
it's
you're
like,
eating?
"Oh, it just tasted like red velvet cake," and I was like, "It's got pig's blood in it."
So this is the level of the mad scientist that is Nurman. But not a mad scientist that you want to dissuade, because there's some amazing concepts that come out of this. Again, the 22 different forms of corn in a cake. There's been the same conversations around coffee. There's been the same conversations around all sorts of ingredients. And there's just some amazing things. And if you watch the series, by the way, it's reflected in the Australian series. Aaron, you bake things that are edible. You knew I was going to do that to you, Nurman. You knew. So no, you the Snackretary himself, America's sweetheart. You tend to go for, I'd say, more classic flavors, but it's more classic flavors in comparison to Nurman.
Yeah, like I think somebody once recently described my baking as kind of like neo nana. It's like what I do is kind of it's rooted in the Woman's Day cookbook. It's rooted in like I'm staring right now. I'm staring at my nan's Australia, the Lucky Country cookbook, which is this big like 70s, 80s looking, like everything's kind of like, my baking starts and kind of ends there, but on the way I pick up some flavors that you might not have expected. And that's
Lots of Davidson plum.
Look, more so now.
Yeah.
Big plum.
Big plum is
Thank
life.
you, Maggie.
Big plum is life. Big plum is love.
One of us.
So obviously what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the 8 weeks of Canadian. And then after this podcast, there will be a part 2 to this. Now, I don't think it takes a genius to work out. Part 2 is then going to be 2 bakers from Series 6, Great Canadian, doing the Great Australian Bake-Off for the same series. So this is going to be fascinating. Now, what I will say is that Aaron and Nurman have the benefit as such of only having 8 weeks, whereas the Canadians will have 10. And don't worry, one of the 2 Canadian bakers has pointed that out to me and has made mention of what they are. Now, I will reveal at the end of the podcast who the 2 Canadian bakers are. So if you'd like to know who's going to do that, you're going to have to keep listening. So let's get into it, because we're going to begin like all bake-offs do, with Cake Week. Now, with Cake Week, the decision is between the friands, 12 friands, or the kawaii cake. Now, we decided to go with the 12 friands, mainly because I thought, like, for a start, kawaii cake is more of a visual medium, and podcast is not a visual medium, so therefore it's utterly useless. But also flavor-wise, the friands are more about flavors and textures and different things you can do, as opposed to with a kawaii, I think it's more about how you make it look. Do we sort of agree with that?
Yeah, because like you can kind of visualize what the friand would look like, because you wouldn't overdo decoration on a friand, would you?
No, I mean, like it's when you describe the kawaii cakes, for example, like, you know, and like I think it was Joe Mars where he put the little butt on it, and you've got to describe the little butt on the cake, and it's like, well, that's okay. Visually, everyone gets a different picture there. Whereas friands, you can see a friand, like when Nigel did his chicken ones, with the crispy chicken skin. If you described that friand, I think people can picture it.
Yeah,
you know, it's very hard to picture the kawaii cakes.
Nurman and myself both kind of, while we were, you know, coming up with our recipes for our season, like we both had our little sketch pads. And Nurman would do like you'd do like a mind map kind of thing, whereas I'd be like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I just want to draw what it looks like in my mind.
Yeah. And that's,
I think with the kawaii cake, use fondant, and please no to fondant.
Yeah, no.
And
I think, and look, this is something that's going to actually be quite common, I think, across both, is that I already know with the Canadian bakers who we've got coming on, they've got the exact same view of fondant, which is don't do cakes with just overly layered fondant. They're pretty boring, and fondant's a bit sickly.
Yeah, I've used it for like decorative elements, but I think I've maybe covered a cake in fondant once and I hated it as an experience.
I've not used fondant since 2015.
Yeah, nah.
Yeah, and again in America, obviously for bakers in North America, fondant obviously always gets paired with Rice Krispie squares to shape things into, exactly, Nurman. That's the reaction. So 12 friands. Now in the show they had 2 hours. I'm not going to really hold you to time. What were we thinking that we would have made for the friands? And were there any friands that you remember? Obviously, the one for me is Nigel's chicken.
It's burnt into my brain. It's like, what a cool idea.
Yeah, chicken and waffles. Yeah. So I'll start with you, Nurman. What's your friand?
My friands are actually based on color black.
Of course they
which
are.
I think, yeah, of course, has got to be me. I mean, I love black.
Yep.
If you remember, I did the black bake at some point a few months ago. So it's going to be black sesame friands.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have blackberry buttercream on top. I wanted to simulate a little bit of that licorice sort of flavor, so I decided to do mandarin and star anise gel, and then a little bit of black pepper streusels on top.
Nice. That's a really, I mean, it's going to be visually stunning. I mean, because you get that contrast, whereas, everyone's expecting the very pale sort of friandish sort of, with the drizzle and stuff like that, and you're giving them black.
With a little bit of purple, and then the
hit
orange on top. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, visually it's really stunning, but also like just that flavor pairing is a really interesting flavor pairing to sort of come up with. I like that idea. Aaron, what are you coming up with?
Well, thinking about this one, when we were first talking about it, I was fixated on the, for people listening well into the future, the 2022 cultural reset that was a Negroni Tagliato with Prosecco in it. Oh, stunning. So my idea was a sort of orange and Prosecco cake batter. So I've made a cake before where Prosecco is kind of part of the liquid component for the cake. So I was Riesling, but whatever. It's a white wine.
Yes.
So that forms the cake, and then sort of swirled through with a blood orange and vermouth marmalade jam, like quick marmalade jam situation, and then just candied peel and stuff on top.
I do love the blood orange and vermouth as that's really cool. So you've got definitely, again, different avenues, but I think what I really like about them both is that they're flavors that they're achievable for a start. They're not things that, we haven't sat down to do this and gone, and I'm going to put amazingly weird things in these. But
I haven't.
No, Nurman hasn't. But Nurman hasn't. Yeah, not yet. I know not yet. That's why I said we've started like fairly straightforward. It's going to get weird, but I have no doubt it's going to get weird. The black sesame friands for you, Nurman, is quite restrained. And
that's true. That's very true.
But Negroni is also very on brand. Aaron, it's very on brand.
I like taking an idea or a vibe and putting that into a bake. That's how I came up with half my like most, if not all, of my sort of, I guess, signatures on the show. Like they came from a concept. Like I don't think there was one moment on the show where I came up with an idea and then changed it. Like I'm just like, what came to my head first? Cool. How can I make this specific thing work?
Yeah.
Can I suggest with the Negroni friands, what if you soak it in the alcohol?
A bit like babkas.
Yeah, sort of like a little bit of
a bit like rhumbubas, sorry.
Negroni syrup soaking in the friands.
Yeah, that's true. Because then I could, instead of doing like, if I did like a Negroni syrup, that could be.
And then you could soak,
yes.
Yeah, you could make them a bit like rhumbubas, and you could do a soak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, I always like. Why do I always forget the name of that spirit? I think it's Aperol, but it's Campari.
Campari. Every to pull back the curtain a little bit, every time we have a conversation around alcohol, Aaron says it's like Aperol, but it's not. It's the other one.
Because like I'm like Aperol spritz, what a delight, and then I forget that Campari exists.
Campari exists.
But yeah, so like make a Campari syrup,
Ooh, and then
Kind
soak
of-
them in there, and then
Yeah.
and that'll keep
Set it
and-
on fire.
But and texture,
Yes.
and texture wise though, that I mean, we might need fire later on for the 3D chocolate. We'll get there,
Yeah,
but
true.
but I like the idea of the soaking in the syrup too. Again, makes them a little bit like rum butters. You know, soak them in there for a bit, get it all. And texturally, it works with a friand. You know, whereas if it's a cake, you run the risk of changing the texture of the cake and it being a bit more dense or a bit more soggy. Whereas with a friand is supposed to be.
Because there's usually a nut flour in there as well, making it quite tender.
That density already exists, so you're not changing your texture of your cake. If anything, it's probably actually adding to the friand itself. So I remember that's why part of the reason why with Cake Week I didn't go kawaii cake and we went with the friands is that, again, I think it opens itself up to, and we saw that with Canadian because we had such a wide array of concepts. Zoya did white poppy. You had sea berries, which I swear is a fake, much like, the Saskatoon berry. The sea berry is not a real berry. I don't care.
I've spoken to Chi, like sea berries, Saskatoon berries,
not real. It's all
berries. They're not real.
Scam. But then like John went with figgy duff, and like you say, mango for Christy, pistachio, pineapple, Andre. She made Black Forest, and obviously Nigel with the chicken and waffles. Friands offer so much more. Now, the other thing too, just to clarify with everyone, it is only a signature or a showstopper because you can't change the technical. Even though Nurman, if you watch the series of Australian, desperately tried to change the technical every single time he made one.
Yeah, every time he took an immersion blender or something.
Yeah, because he doesn't. He doesn't follow instructions.
My best friend, right?
Yeah, Nurman doesn't follow instructions. So Nurman just does what Nurman does. So in technicals, that doesn't play brilliantly. But
I never got last.
No, and you made a grand final with it. So
whereas I did. So
different approaches. Different approaches to the technical, but also the technical tends to be more about, and this is something you guys can obviously speak to with great, authority. The technicals a pain in the ass of a bake. It's not a bake to enjoy. It's a bake to piss people off.
Yes.
But enjoyably piss people off, if that makes sense. It's not, you don't savor the technical while you're making it. After the fact, you might go, oh yeah. But,
yeah, it's not impossible. Like the difficulty there is because it's something that we haven't rehearsed. Like the signatures and the showstoppers, they're things that we've at least had an opportunity to practice once.
Yeah.
Whereas technicals, it's like I don't even know if it's the right shape.
Yeah.
I've made like variation of the technicals with the exception of that pudding.
Don't make the pudding. Don't make the pudding.
Don't make the pudding. No.
Although that creme anglaise, I could just drink that.
I know, but it's just creme anglaise though.
It's creme anglaise. Just make the creme.
But the thing is, I don't like being told what to do during the technical. Like, don't tell me.
Because I crave order.
Yeah, Aaron craves order and structure, and Nurman is a chaos demon.
Yes.
And just sort of chaos embraces him, and he embraces chaos, and they dance down the aisle together merrily. So I think it's and that is, I think, a pretty good summary of your Bakeoff experience, Nurman. I'm just checking your facts while we have this conversation, and at no point did you come last in a technical. That is amazing, especially knowing how much you hated
despite not following recipes.
I mean, look, and again, I'm not spoiling anything for people with the finale, but somebody won the technical in the finale. Just putting it out there. Not naming anybody, but he didn't come last in one, put it that way. So biscuits and bars week. Let's move on to week 2. So biscuits and bars, look, this was an easy choice for me because it was either 12 meringue bars or the fairy tale scene. Now, first of all, I thought the fairy tale scene was one of the best challenges they did. And look, when we get to the Canadian Vergies, it's in the running for a couple of awards, I think. The meringue bars as well just feels like a normal challenge. It's just make a slice of some description. Must include meringue in some way, shape, or form. Now, some of them naturally included meringue. Others, like Andre, made a caramel slice and put a meringue on top of it because he wanted it to fit. But the
Can I just do a shout out to Christie's best queer bars in town though?
oh,
Yes.
That was
the amount of
fabulous.
work that she put into the flags.
I like whiskey sours and I'm very gay.
Yes, it's one of the lines of the series. I think I like whiskey sours and I'm very gay. But the fairy tale scene from this week, as it had the potential to go wrong in terms of people doing a really bland scene or just not interpreting it. What I love about this is all of the bakers interpreted it a different way. And you got some amazingly impressive things. You got some things you would never expect to see. I know with her background, especially attending Chinese school, I would never have anticipated, though, the Legend of the Jade Rabbit to appear, which Christie made, which was stunningly good. And as they said, her work with the icing in particular her flooding was amazing.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what inspired my idea for this one as well.
Yeah. So we went with, and Rosie obviously talked about when she was on the podcast, she talked about doing the 12 Dancing Princesses because she wanted to do something a little bit darker. And that was where she could go with this. And we'll start with you, Aaron, because I get the feeling that Nurman is going to go somewhere with this. So we'll start with you, Aaron. The fairy tale scene.
All right. So I'm thinking like 3 different biscuits. Now, I know we were talking about how podcasts are not a visual medium, but you have to imagine this for me for a moment. If you're looking at it from the top down, the base that it's all sort of sitting on is basically a yin-yang symbol, and each sandwich biscuit and sort of surrounded by 12 different sort of segments that are all equally shaped. They kind of like fit together as like a ring. Each sandwich biscuit, the top biscuit is like a black sesame shortbread. The bottom biscuit is, I'm sorry, Chris, a matcha shortbread. And it's sandwiched with like a red bean kind of filling.
Okay.
So you got a yin yang symbol in the middle and then alternating like white and dark sort of panels around the outside. 12 of them, because like sort of stuck to with royal icing or caramel, or I don't know, I haven't gotten that far, is each of the 12 Chinese zodiac animals decorated like as like a decorated with royal icing. And I'm picturing like a gingerbread, but using like Szechuan peppercorn and like Chinese 5 spice and stuff as part of the spice blend in there. So yeah, like, and they're all in like the correct order, just to sort of represent that the mythology of why the Chinese zodiac exists and the order that the animals appear in, which was like I think it was like a race amongst the animals to impress the Jade Emperor or something to that effect. Yeah, I like that idea.
I mean, it would be the second appearance of Chinese zodiac animals by an Australian baker. Obviously, Fee in season 3 made little pastry shoe ones, but this is, I think, it's a different thing altogether. She made little pastry zodiacs, whereas you're making this basically display. I love the idea and sort of the structure. Even with matcha, I actually love the design.
Is that on a lazy Susan? So as you spin it,
yeah,
you see
so
each of
you
the
go around.
animals? Yeah.
Exactly, which is how a zodiac has to work. You have to have the option of it moving around. It's not stationary. It should be moving.
Well, I've been watching Claudia's season recently, and I just watched the episode where they have to do the biscuit puzzle.
Oh, yes.
And so that kind of, again, so that plus what Christie did on with the Legend of the Jade Rabbit is kind of where I'm getting my. And
look, that's great inspiration. That's great inspiration to take. If I'm going to take inspiration, it's 2 pretty good places to get it from. Nurman, what have we picked?
I like things that are dark, and I think you're well aware of that.
Yep.
Initially, I was thinking, okay, what if I do, Brother Grimm's version, like really dark sort of, and I was like, no, that's a bit too benign. So let's go something really out of the box. And I've decided to go with Dante's Inferno, 9 Circles of Hell.
And this is why I said I'm not going to hold them to a time limit, because I think Dante's Circles of Hell represented in biscuits form is going to... Please, Nurman, describe.
So there is this drawing from like a few books or a few photos a few pictures of this upside down conical shape hell thing.
Yeah, the diagram of hell according to
diagram of hell. And I was sort of thinking, you go from the top to the bottom. The bottom one is obviously the 9th circle, and then you've got like limbo on top, lust, gluttony, greed, wrath, heresy, violence, fraud, and treachery.
Yep.
And each of them will inspire different flavors of biscuits.
Ooh.
So the limbo one is apparently based on, that's where the pagans live.
Yep.
And when I think of pagans, I think of apple, because there is actually a local cider place called Pagan Cider in Tassie. So I was actually thinking apple and blue cheese shortbread for that top one, the limbo.
Yep.
Lust has got to do something with love and romance. So I was thinking strawberry sugar cookies with rose and champagne jelly.
The champagne jelly, rose and champagne jelly. I'm here.
Gluttony makes me think of pig. So what if I do bacon and cheddar shortbread for that one?
Ooh. Yes.
The greed was a difficult one because I was sort of thinking greed. All I can think of is gold dust on everything. So I was like,
Rochelle Adonis has just heard you and come running.
What if I do like gold
somewhere
dust?
in the world, her ears have just twitched and she's just gone.
Oh, I know. I just thought, marigold. You can actually get like marigold, in a dried form.
Yep.
What if you actually crush that, mix it with the gold dust in a biscuit dough, and then paint it with gold?
That could work.
Yep. Wrath has got to be something hot. So I was thinking gochujang and masa
and
cookies.
I like the fact that you've gone gochujang too. You haven't gone like just a base chili. You've gone gochujang, so you've got the texture as well. I like.
You don't want to be basic, Chris.
No, you don't want to be basic.
No. And then the wrath level is where you've got the river Styx, which is this sort of marshy part of the circle of hell. So I was thinking of making the river Styx out of gochujang caramel.
Yes.
Gochujang twice, man.
Yeah, I know.
But this could actually, by the way, just while we're going through this, I actually think, given there was 4 hours to do this challenge, I actually think that Nurman could get this done in under 4 hours.
Well, yeah, because you wouldn't need, like, for each circle, you wouldn't actually need that much biscuit.
Baking
You're
time.
creating 9.
No. So you could actually, this is a realistic inside the 4 hours to do this. Be going some, but you'll get it done.
So the heresy, apparently there's this tombs, like burning tombs on this level.
Yep.
So I was sort of thinking, what if I do like vanilla and charcoal tomb sort of tomb-shaped biscuits?
Yep.
And then, I don't know, maybe find a way to light it in fire.
I mean, it's been that far down might be a problem.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it'll burn the entire thing.
It'll burn the whole thing.
It'll burn the whole thing down.
But that
well,
actually,
but that's the chaos that I am, though.
But that would then fit in with the bottom layer.
So violence is the stained glass biscuits.
Yep.
But the stained glass, you break it with a hammer.
Yep.
I haven't really thought of the flavor of that one. Fraud, I want to do like Malabauge, which is this sort of amphitheater sort of structure in hell.
Yep.
That's made look like chocolate chip cookies, except with raisins.
No, that's
because it's fraud, right?
That's disastrous.
Yeah,
I hate you. Yeah,
I hate you, and therefore it's absolutely perfect for that level.
And then the deepest level is the cold, so it's got to be mint something. So chocolate and mint.
See, what I would have done is rather than raisins, I would have possibly even gone carob.
Oh,
because that's a complete fraud right there.
Oh, what about prunes?
I think carob is more of a fraud because it's going to present closer than the others would to choc chips, and it's sort of chocolate, but it's not really. It's just the chocolate you get when you don't want to give kids chocolate.
Nature's chocolate.
Don't start with the nature's chocolate thing. I think both of those concepts, first of all, would fit in under the time. I really believe that Nurman could get that done under time, and secondly, the display for both of them is going to be absolutely spectacular. I like both concepts a lot because they are, again, so different, but they're not not one of them's not like stayed like, here's a basic model of this. You've got the Chinese zodiac moving around and the different concept of flavors and the different. Nurman's got 9 layers and wants to set fire to the 7th one. I think there's a lot going on in both, but I think it's in a really good way. So I feel like that's something that, yeah, I think a lot of people would get a kick out of those. I think at some point in the future, the Dante's Inferno especially has to happen. Just because I think there's your magnum opus. There's your
when's the celebration day for Hell, like Hell Day or something?
When's Hell Day?
Make it for like Hell Day.
When's Hell Day?
Oh wait, let me look up the date for International Men's Day.
Oh, when's Incel Week? So you just find Incel Week at Hell. That's Hell. Look, I think that's again fairy tales because they went with a broad definition. I mean, Nigel got to use his D&D dragon, Hirashi,
which I
obviously.
love so much.
Everyone,
like as a D&D nerd.
Chris? Apparently, there is the Hell is Freezing Over Day. Which is January 31st, 2023.
Oh, there we go.
So
there we
go. You've got a month.
Is that my challenge for that day?
End of January. There you go, everyone. I think both those challenges are really cool. And again, Nigel made Hirashi, which is epic. And I will stand there and argue when they were like, oh, he looks a bit rough. It's a dragon who fights. What are you expecting? Like, Hirashi,
I have to ask him, like what kind? Like, is it an ancient red dragon? Like, what is it? Because in D&D, there's like classes of there's classes of dragon based on like whether they're chromatics or they're a color or whether they're metallic or whatever, and then like age as well. So I want to know the what kind of D&D dragon it is.
I just really enjoyed that in a challenge which gave us, when it happened, the Central Park carriage ride. We've also got Dante's Inferno. So I love the broad spectrum of Bakeoff is undeniable. Which brings us to, speaking of undeniable things in Bakeoff, Bread Weeks. So Bread Week, again, it was a choice between flatbread or the bread works of art. Look, flatbreads were tempting, but while they were tempting, they've got to make one sculpture.
Yeah. I mean, like, I love a gozleme at like 2 a.m. when I'm on my way home.
But how much can you do?
Yeah.
Like, how much can you do? Like, there's only so much. Whereas I think bread works of art, I think, gives us a double barrel level of creativity, because I think you can describe that work of art probably a little bit clearer than with some of the other challenges where it's a bit harder to, like, I mentioned the kawaii cake. Hard to describe a kawaii cake. If you're describing a bread work of art, if you're talking about a school of art, or you're talking about a school of architecture or something on those lines, you can describe that quite easily and people can get the picture. So I think that's probably a bit better. So we'll start with Nurman this time for the bread work of art. Now, I'm assuming that neither of you have recreated the meow, which was, again,
cultural reset.
Cute. It was so ridiculously cute, and I've never seen a version of the scream quite like it. So Nurman, what are we doing for the bread work of art?
So when I think of art, one of my favorite, I mean, I thought about either Goya, or Dali. So, but I ended up going with Dali's soft self-portrait with grilled bacon.
And by the way, can I just say, Salvador Dali would love that.
I think he would like it. And the word bacon was what inspired the flavors for this. So have you? I mean, if you can't remember that self-portrait, it's pretty much this melting face of Dali with the stash. And you've got sticks supporting the melting face, and then you've got this pedestal underneath. So what I was thinking is the pedestal was going to be focaccia base. So it's going to have fig and prosciutto. The sticks are going to be grissini supporting sticks.
Oh, I like that.
So it's going to be made out of black garlic, lard, and Parmesan.
Oh, I'm here for that.
So pig, right? Pig.
Yep.
The
Clever.
face is going to be fougasse that's made with apple,
Ooh.
sage, and pancetta.
That famous movie snack, Fugas. Yep.
Fougasse, yep. Because I think it's going to be a little bit stiff, and it will stand up really well.
Fugas would hold the shape.
Yeah, and then if you put like the grissini supporting stick on top of that, it's going to stand, and you just poke the grissini into the focaccia.
Gotcha, and that should be your supports.
And I'm also going to create bacon jam dipping sauce for the grissini.
I am here for a bacon jam. I am really here for a bacon. Look, bacon is my favorite fruit to put in jam. And I love nothing more than a good bacon fruit and jam. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Aaron, what are we going with?
I actually want to revisit my biscuit chandelier a little bit. So the story with that was that I didn't have a proper frame the morning of, so I kind of grabbed sticks out of the garden and like strung them together.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, no, like I loved how it turned out. So I'm going for something kind of like Midsummer Blair Witch pagan. Hey, Christy. So like sort of so this time mine is suspended. So it's sort of a framework made of sort of hopefully quite stable grissini.
Yeah.
Like sweet grissini as well, like a cinnamon sugar situation, and then sort of on it and sort of hanging from it a little bit, just sort of little sort of rosette like scrolls filled with like a bit of a blackberry apple jam situation.
Well, that'd be nice, because you get that really. I'm really intrigued by the sweet grissini. That's actually got me really intrigued. The cinnamon sugar grissini. That's really, I like that.
Well, yeah, because some grissini are made with beer, so I imagine I would use like a apple or a pear cider in place of it, and I wouldn't need to add too much sugar to it as well, especially if I'm putting cinnamon sugar on top.
So that'll give you the double sweetness.
Reduce the apple cider to make it even sweeter. And
yeah, true. And I would probably need to stick it together with some caramel here or there, and I love a good caramel.
Yeah, who doesn't love a good caramel? You know, and you know how to make it on a stovetop. You don't need a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
No Cuisinart pressure cooker here.
Only Smeg.
Only Smeg. Smeg is love. Smeg is life.
Triggered.
So Botanical Week. So for Botanical Week, we had either the illusion cake or pressed flowers. Look, illusion cakes are illusion cakes. They're quite common. They're all over the place. The pressed flower sandwich cookie, on the other hand, really, really, really cried out here. And this is very much Aaron's wheelhouse.
Yep.
We are playing with flavors that Aaron loves.
I have about 8 different flowers in my pantry, and not like flowers as in plain flower. I mean just like roses,
edible ones,
flower. Yes. Like I got stuck with this one. I didn't know what to do
because you had too many options.
Too many options. So what? And I'm kind of spitballing here as I go, but kind of like I think Nurman, you were telling me about this thing where you used like dried roses to create a flower.
Yeah.
At some point.
So you can actually ground it with just in regular like spice grinder, turn it into flour.
Yeah, and it'll powder up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually kind of thinking like macarons. I don't know if this would even work, but macarons using ground roses as part of the flour component, as part of the almond flour component, and then fill it with I don't know, like a lemon and lavender curd, or like a white chocolate and wattle seed, because wattle seed counts. Wattle seed's a botanical.
I'd go white chocolate and wattle seed for the balance with the rose. I think
white chocolate and wattle seed curd and filling, because because wattle seed's got this like nice sort of coffee nutty note to it.
You can actually use like dried rose petals and just drop it on top of the macarons and let it
bake. And it will bake quite nicely. So
I think the rose flour macarons with that white chocolate wattle seed, that's a really nice balance. And again, it's something also different for our Canadian listeners, because of course wattle seed, not something you're going to find in the middle of Saskatoon, not something you're going to find when you're walking around the prairies, not common to PEI. So Nurman, for you with the pressed flour sandwich cookies.
This one I decided to put in my love of foraging into this. So I mean, you can find fennel so easily in Tasmania.
Yep.
And usually what I would do in summer is actually collect fennel fronds. So my thought is, if I can dry fennel fronds, turn it into powder, and then with the fennel on top of it, fennel seeds, you mix it and turn it into sablé biscuit, and then get the fennel frond imprinted, press on top of that. The filling is going to be orange and fennel marmalade, I reckon. And then it's going to have fennel juice caramel on the inside. So it's a biscuit sandwich situation.
Yeah, that's a really, again, good use of fennel. I like the sort of combo there. It's very, that all works.
Classic. It's not me.
But
It's a bit
sometimes,
classic.
but sometimes,
It feels you.
yeah, it still feels very Nurman. And you don't need to sometimes go absolutely crazy overboard if your flavors are good. And one of the things that, and again, for our Canadian listeners, if you haven't watched Australian, please do. One of the things that stuck out, especially with what you were doing, Nurman, was like your combination of flavors was always just something where everyone went, that actually works. Like there'd be a pause followed by, actually, that's really good. And that's another example of it with that, the fennel.
Like the cherry and brie tarts you did for dessert week, I think,
which should have had, look, to be blunt, had no right working and yet sounded incredible.
Oh, thanks.
So, but yeah, and look, with Aaron's ones there, as he said, like literally we discussed what weeks we're going to do. And we got to botanical week and it's like, well, this is your week. And he's like, yes, but we know first of all,
there's too many options.
And first of all, we know what happens when someone says this is their week.
I'm going home this week.
Aaron's like, I'm out. That's it. I'm done.
No, but for real, like I would have loved a botanical week in our season. Like we got homegrown week, and I guess that was, effectively the same thing. Like, because the amount of indigenous flavors we were working with, a lot of them are quite botanical. They're quite floral or herbaceous. So, like, yeah, but I would have frothed the botanical week.
That's a mashup of the homegrown, but also with the fruit and veg week that we did.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I assume that if you had to trade one of your weeks out and put one in, that maybe botanical might go in for, let's just pick a random week, retro week.
You mean nostalgia week?
Yes.
Everyone's
nostalgia
favorite
week. Yeah.
Officially, they called it retro, even though it's nostalgia. So,
it is nostalgia. Well, I wonder whether it's because of that idea of what nostalgia is.
Yeah. No, it is actually nostalgia week, but I think nostalgia is a crazy option anyway, but we've talked about that before. All right, moving on. Chocolate week. So this was the hardest one to work out something to do. Because the reason is ice cream sandwiches, we've just done the pressed flour cookies. So you can't really double up on that. Secondly, I made it clear on that week of the podcast, I don't like when they make them make ice cream, especially not in the format they had to make the ice cream in. 3D chocolate reveals are a bit, I mean, they're very Instagram.
It's like when British did the caramel week, and it didn't really matter what was underneath it. It just needed to be underneath the caramel dome.
Yeah, exactly. 3D chocolate reveal just had to be under a chocolate. That was it. And yeah, it could have been any dessert, but it just had to be cloaked in a chocolate shell. So it was basically the most creative way to break a chocolate shell. Now, I thought that was the one we were going to end up having to go with, which we did. I'm interested to see what we came up with for this. Nurman,
I think my first idea got vetoed
It did.
because it was a bit too dark.
It was very dark. Nurman's
was
first
very
idea was
dark.
incredibly dark.
I don't
Yeah.
even remember what Nurman's first idea was now.
Huh?
Go
I
on.
don't even remember what your idea was now.
You can't do
my
it, but
idea for that
go
one
on.
was it was going to be the hot air balloon.
Yeah.
With people in the
but like,
basket.
but the people are marshmallows, and then it drops down into a
It dropped down
mug of
and
hot
they
chocolate.
all
For people who didn't
You know.
listen to the Australian episodes, for the most recent series, our story of Nurman involves him having a hot air balloon, and access to Maggie Beer's Stately Beer Manor, and he had his own hot air balloon docking point at Stately Beer Manor. And so Nurman wanted to recreate that, but the breaking of the chocolate shell was the dropping of the hot air balloon and the dying of the passengers. So yeah,
that got vetoed.
we vetoed that one because
I've got another one though.
yeah, because my rule was if Foxtel would veto it, I vetoed it.
So I'm calling this one exceptional.
Oh, exceptional. I wonder what the key thing's going to be.
So it's gonna be egg dessert in another egg, another egg, another egg. You know how you've got like so many different, 4 different types of chocolate. You've got the
Exception.
exception, yeah. Dark chocolate egg.
Yep.
That's the largest one.
Yep.
I'm thinking the inside is gonna be, when you cover it and then the inside you sprinkle it with some powder. So what if you do like passion fruit powder for that one?
Yep.
And then the inside is going to be the milk chocolate egg.
Yeah.
It's going to have peanut and caramel popcorn crumbs scattered all over it. Inside that is going to be the ruby chocolate. That's actually tempered. Yep, tempered. And you've got coconut and dried cherries.
Yep.
And then I would put like this chocolate pashmak, like the fairy floss thing, to signify that it's a nest.
Oh, you nearly lost me with the ruby chocolate, but you've just won me back.
And then the last one is the white chocolate egg.
Yep.
That's going to be like real egg.
Yep.
Inside is going to be sago pearls, coconut mousse, and then you've got mango spheres that when you break it open, it just comes out like broken egg.
Break the yolk.
Break the yolk.
Oh,
yes.
I love that. That's really cool. And I like the idea with the powders too. If you've got the powder inside, when you crack the first one, you get the crack, but you also get a bit of the powder effect as well. So you get 2 effects for the I like that. I really do. Again, you've managed to make me not hate something which features ruby chocolate. That takes a lot of effort because I'm not a fan. Aaron, what are we going with?
I'm going with fairy bread.
That's spectacular. Enough said. Okay,
There we go.
Aaron's done.
Okay.
Okay.
No, so a white chocolate sphere, the outside of which is coated in, hundreds and thousands.
Yep.
And that, imagine it breaks. Let's say it breaks. We break it open to reveal like a little mousse cake entremet situation. I know you love a situation, which is like a funfetti cake, quote unquote funfetti cake, with like a strawberry jam, a burnt bread a toast and white chocolate mousse, and then like a psychedelic rainbow mirror glaze.
I absolutely love. I can visualize that one. I can see that one, and I'm very much that has to happen at some point. That would be super cool.
It would be fun. Like
it's just that screams it's the sort of, because it's that sort of it's the more outgoing, the brighten, the vibrancy, the hundreds and thousands, you break it open, the funfetti cake, the psychedelic sort of glaze thing. I really love the idea of that too. That just seems really cool.
Is there a way to incorporate white bread flavor? So if you actually,
that's what the toast would be for.
That's
like
the toast.
Okay. The only I've made a toast mousse before, and the only way to get like a proper bread flavor of any kind is to get that Maillard reaction going. And
and I mean, Nigel got the burning toast done for his one, and obviously ran out of time, unfortunately. But again, that's sort of, it's not a completely out there concept of putting the toast in there as well. So that's I like that idea a lot. Both of those ideas, again, I think, I mean, Nurman, you'd probably need to turn up with you'd need to have your molds pre-done, obviously.
Yes.
Coming in for that one there. But you've got how long? 3 hours, 15 minutes. Just depends on how long it takes you for your chocolate to set.
See, I think I'm sort of thinking if you temper it with sous vide, that would be a lot easier. So I can easily just set the temperature, like set a few sous vide steaks, and then set it at a certain temperature, and then temper it with sous vide.
Well, the other one is too, and this is, I know this always gets the chagrin of people up. I don't really care. Is tempering chocolate in a microwave is ridiculously simple and leads to really good results. And they mean all the time they do that. Oh, you can't temper, you got to temper it over the boiling, and you got to do it over the boiler, and you can't temper it in a microwave. Rubbish. You can temper chocolate in a microwave perfectly well, and it will temper really nicely. The problem is when people put it in for too long and burn it. That's your issue. So you've got to watch it like a hawk. But if you get it to the right consistency, you can do it in the microwave faster, temper it, and then have it chilling faster. So
you can do a lot of things with the microwave.
Yeah, you've just got to sort of, again, you've got to be more careful with where you put it, obviously, because the heat's not the same consistently. But if you know your microwave, like we temper chocolate. I've put up images before of the profiteroles and stuff that I've made, and when I've done the tempered chocolate on the top, I do tempered chocolate in the microwave because I cannot be bothered standing over a boiler and doing it that way. When I can temper it perfectly well in a microwave and get them dunked in there properly and have them with the proper temper on top. So it just, for me, makes a lot more sense. So you could definitely get that done in the time. There's a million ways to do that. The one that one of the ones I was most excited about actually is the baklava. So pastry week. So pastry week was either going to be the kurtos, the chimney cakes, or the baklava tower. Now, baklava tower, one, because the kurtos are not normally filled, so I'm like, but secondly, baklava is very popular in Australia. We have very large migrant communities here, especially from Middle Eastern parts of the world, and baklava is incredibly easy to find and very good in a lot of places.
It's right next to the Goslame at 2 a.m. when I'm walking.
Exactly. Exactly. And so like we have a lot of baklava here. So like I looked at this one, and this one for me wasn't a question. This was baklava all the way. Let's start with Aaron on this one.
I actually used to have a couple of students in my class. One was from a Greek background and one was from a Turkish background, and they used to argue about like who invented
Warring baklava.
Warring baklava. Just as an aside, I'm going with, again, we're going back to like nana flavors. Both are walnut baklava, but one has grated carrot and like a carrot sugar syrup. So a carrot cake baklava, effectively. And then the other has banana chips mixed in with the walnuts, and it's like and dried coconut, and it's like a pineapple juice sugar syrup. So you've got a carrot cake baklava and a hummingbird cake baklava. How I'm constructing it into a tower, I don't know. Is there cream cheese frosting? Probably.
I'd anticipate some form of cream cheese. Well, see, you could almost sort of, you could play off that battle between which form of baklava was best, and sort of have them in like warring formations.
Just build a ziggurat.
Yeah. When in doubt, build a ziggurat. Look, it worked for Devo. Okay, so if it works for Devo, it can work for your baklava. When in doubt, build a ziggurat. Nurman.
I struggled with this one because when you think of baklava, you think of nuts, and I wanted to do something that's just not nuts. So I decided to, well, one of them is not nuts. I went back to Indonesia for this one. So I used Indonesian flavor for this baklava. The first one is pandan, toasted coconut, and palm sugar. So my thought was, if I use the pandan to make the phyllo pastry, so it's green, And then the inside is toasted coconut with the palm sugar. And you layer it and then you roll it and you turn it like a donut shaped and then bake it like that.
Okay, that would work. I mean, the lack of nuts. I mean, look, the one thing I will say so far with the lack of nuts is that the Greek and the Turkish students would both be united as one against you. So you would be bringing people together.
Yeah.
And
Maybe I'll use sesame, like toasted
you'd get away with sesame. You'd
be fine with sesame.
Yeah.
But I
Baklava for people.
I don't want to eat nuts or anything.
Baklava for people with nut allergies. Well done. You're thinking. You're diverse.
Yeah.
And so what would be the other one?
The second one is actually based on this Indonesian dessert that I really love, and I think Lauren from the Canadian Bakeoff would know. It's called terang bulan, which is this pancake sandwich thing with sweetened condensed milk, chocolate sprinkles, chopped peanuts, cheddar cheese, and lots of butter.
Did you just say cheese?
Yeah, I just stopped for a minute. You said cheddar cheese, didn't you? That was real.
Yes.
So hang on, what are the layers again?
So it's like you've got two pancakes, like thick pancakes with lots of butter in it. You put sweetened condensed milk, and then you sprinkle chocolate, chopped peanuts, and cheddar cheese sandwich. Except, what if I use those fillings, with the exception of the pancake, and then turn it into phyllo pastry, and then turn it into stick? So my thought in assembly is that I'm gonna put the stick on top of each other, and then the donuts will sort of be stacked around.
So they'll be stacked on so it'll be supporting the donut. That's okay. Yeah.
So it's gonna be, tower.
There are moments where you realize that somebody's brain doesn't work the same way that yours does, in a really good way. This is one of those times, Nurman. That's weirdly sensational.
And you wouldn't think the cheese would work, but I think recently I had like a proper knafe for the first time, and that it's like, oh, cheese does work.
It really does. The best one.
Chris, if you go to Rosebery, they've actually got a place where they sell really nice dessert, like that dessert. One of the places there.
I'm gonna have to go there now.
Actually taste it there.
I'm gonna have to go there now because it sounds amazing. That sounds really good. Very different from the options that were given, but I love those flavor combos, and I'm also really here for the carrot cake. That carrot cake one sounds incredible.
It's like, I remember, when was it? It was the charcuterie board. Or before that, even when I was experimenting with candy and carrot in the first place. It's like when you candy something, the syrup that comes off of it, takes on the color and the flavor of whatever you were candying. And whenever I would candy carrot, like a carrot cake or something, it would come back as this almost carroty flavored orange juice in there or something, orange syrup, and so just pour that over the top of the baklava.
Self-sourcing syrup.
Right. Self-sourcing pudding.
Exactly. No puddings. No puddings.
No puddings. No lard.
Staying away from the steamed puds.
Like puddings. What?
Staying away from the steamed puddings. So the mochi donuts from Fancy Dessert Week. Look, there is a jelly heart cake, but again, a bit like the kawaii cake in week one. A jelly heart cake is very much visual. Mochi donuts are flavor, and mochi donuts are also amazing. So therefore, the answer is mochi donuts. So Nurman, you can start this one.
I wanted to play with the words mochi.
Yep.
And donuts.
Okay.
So the first one is inspired by mochi. The second one is inspired by donuts.
Okay.
So for the mochi one, I want to do an inverted traditional mochi. So you can actually get red bean flour or red bean powder in Asian supermarket.
Yep.
What if you mix that with glutinous rice, turn it into mochi, and then fill the inside with frozen rice pudding, and then you fry it.
An inverted mochi donut.
Inverted mochi donut, right?
I'm here
What do
for
you
it.
think?
I'm here for it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that one apart from yes. I mean, texturally, it's going to be fascinating.
I think the flavor is not going to be like the traditional mochi.
No,
But
you
technically
think
the components are mochi.
it's all it's every part of a mochi donut.
Mhm.
It's just inverted.
Yes.
I'd need to taste it to see how I feel, but I'm not against it. And anything with more red bean, I'm here for. And you know, red bean's making up a majority of the outside because it's making up majority of the dough.
Yes.
So inverted mochi donuts.
Yes. Inverted mochi donuts.
Okay,
That's the first one.
that's the first one. What's your second one?
The second one, when I think about donuts, and I like donuts, but I like crullers a lot more than donuts.
Mm-hmm.
So what if? Okay, this is a bit of a stretch, but
Hang
crullers
on,
are
hang on.
donuts.
For the audience's benefit, this is a bit of a stretch. Okay, let's go.
Because crullers are actually donuts, right?
They are. They've made them in
What if I
Canadian
make
in Donut Week.
choux pastry, but with glutinous rice flour?
Mm.
Pipe them into the cruller shaped, and then fry them, so they're technically crullers. And then I'll just glaze them like Krispy Kreme donuts.
That's simple by your standards, but really effective. And I mean, I like a cruller. Crullers are really good. Crullers are underrated.
I don't know if it's gonna work though. I mean, I've tried.
We'll find out.
Choux pastry out of other things, and they work.
There's no reason why it shouldn't. Like, there's no reason structurally and ingredients wise. There's no reason why that shouldn't work.
I was just sort of thinking because when I made the corn flour choux, it worked. So this technically should work as well.
It's basically the same principle.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason why that wouldn't work. And again, it'd be really outside of the box, but I think it's a good outside of the box. That's interesting. Okay, Aaron, mochi donuts.
Okay. So I had one flavor prepared, and then I was kind of brainstorming one while Nurman was talking. So the first one is blueberry pancakes as a mochi donut. So like buttermilk is part of the liquid component. After frying, it is filled with a raspberry jam. A blueberry jam, and then maple glaze, like simple. It's like the idea of a donut distilled into a mochi donut.
I'm not gonna lie. So far, I love the sound of Nurman's one, but that one's winning for me because I really love blueberries and love blueberry pancakes, so that's winning.
If I'm making a second one, and I'm going with the breakfast theme because I love a breakfast, Mr. Sweet Breakfast. We're going with French toast, and the best French toast I ever had was covered in like a strawberry syrup and was served with like a basil ice cream. So it would be filled. I try to make it square shaped. If I can make like a little square shaped, but then like fill it with a strawberry and basil jam, and then like just a little scoop of like a strawberry cream cheese mixture on top, and let it kind of ooze down.
That'd be really cool. That would be really cool. Because the basil, the strawberry, that sounds really awesome. I like that as a concept, and especially with the texture of like a mochi donut. That the sweetness of that with the pullback of the basil, that's really good. Like that would be really good. I would struggle if I had to come up with what I would do for flavor wise. I wouldn't come up with anything anywhere near that good. But they're sensational. Which brings us to the finale. Now, this is all about the Parry breast. Now, full disclosure for the audience at home. When talking to these gentlemen about doing this, I did foolishly say, if you do this, the bonus is I will make 1 week's worth of challenges. At which point they both very rapid fire came back with, you're making the Parry breast.
Yeah, it was unanimous. It was immediate and unanimous.
Now, largely because choux pastry is the one thing I know I can make. Every other baking thing I do is very hit or miss, except for caramel slice. I can make the caramel slice, but it's not really making it. It's top and fill. But, you know, it's the way most Australians make caramel slice, get some top and fill, boil it up, put it in the chill it, done. But choux pastry I can make. So you're going to get 3 bakes for this one. You're going to get Nurman, you're going to get Aaron, and then you're going to get mine. And the difference is, before Christmas, I will specify what will happen before Christmas. On the Washing Up Instagram account, you will see the bake that I have come up with made. I am going to make it. So it may fall over. That's going to be even funnier if you get to see a fallen over weird Parry breast on the Instagram. But we're going to start this one. We'll start this one with Aaron. So your Parry breast concert.
Now, I always prefer sweet over savory, but after watching the finale, not saying, no spoiler alert for people who haven't watched it, but some of the savory ideas that people are coming up with, and Nurman's coming up with a savory idea.
We're all doing savory ideas.
We're all doing savory ideas. So far be it from me to not bow to peer pressure. I'm doing macaroni and cheese.
I really, really, really like this. And can I just say, I like this so much that Aaron beat me to the punch when we were talking about this by milliseconds. And so I think macaroni cheese would be sensational. I tried to actually give you an extra bit of a tip there, and you didn't take it.
I don't remember what the tip was, but
pulled pork.
Oh yeah. Oh well, no, because yeah. Well, no, because I'm going with bacon.
Yeah, you're going with bacon. So
choux ring, cool.
Yep.
The basis of a Parry breast, but with something of a bit of a Parmesan breadcrumby situation on top, possibly like a bacon breadcrumb sort of gratin topping on the top. I might need to bake it twice, who knows.
Yep.
The filling would be caramelized onion, a macaroni and cheese made with the good cheeses. Like we're talking Gruyere, we might be talking Comte. We're talking a lot with like you've spent money. We're
talking a high quality mac and cheese.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to impress people. Pardon?
Not Velveeta.
No, Velveeta.
No, we're not making this with Velveeta.
Velveeta's not in the postcode of these cheeses.
We're not using the craft kit.
No craft, no craft singles.
Cheese powder. No craft singles. But yeah, so like caramelized onion,
Parmesan in a jar.
Memories. Nostalgia week. Caramelized onion, macaroni and cheese, and then a bacon and cauliflower sort of crumbly, like the cauliflower has been roasted within an inch of its life kind of thing.
It's
and
falling
then,
apart.
like lit on top with like a Parmesan sort of crusty, bacony, breadcrummy thing.
Yeah, that's decadent and a half.
Carbon.
Do it.
Look, as when we get to mine, as people will see, I am a fan of carb on carb. Nurman.
Me too. So I've also gone for savory.
Yep.
And I decided to do what I know best, I suppose. My friends say that I make quite good lamb biryani.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be Parry breast based on biryani, lamb biryani.
Ooh,
so it will have garam masala choux.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have this biryani rice. Has got to be basmati.
Mm-hmm.
And pressure cooked lamb in in that sauce, like luscious sort of sauce. I was actually thinking it needed a little bit of that sort of creamy component. So what if I turn cucumber raita into mousse?
Ooh.
Yes. 1,000,000 times yes.
So cucumber raita mousse, and deep fried onions sitting on top of the entire choux.
Yes, 1,000,000 times yes. I would eat that. Like,
Yeah, that sounds great.
that sounds both of those sound incredible. which is so much better than the monstrosity I'm about to present. So,
No, I don't think so.
so the non-baker loves carbs and loves savory. So why not? Why not? Because if there's one thing the one thing I can make, as I said before, is choux pastry. It's the only thing I can bake, but I can make it properly. So what I'm thinking is make the choux, but let's add a little bit of pecorino. Let's put some pecorino in there, get a bit of pecorino going, maybe some herbs as well into that choux pastry, make the choux ring. In the meantime, we're going to make a ragu. And we're going to slow cook because we're not bothering with the times. We are going to slow cook a ragu. And we're going to do that again within an inch of its life till it's all falling apart. And we're also going to make a base sort of a cream cheese frosting, but sort of probably a bit more savory. I've looked at different ways to do this.
A fluffy bechamel.
Basically a fluffy bechamel. Because what we're going to make is we're going to make a Paris-Brest lasagna. And we're going to present the ring. It's going to have the pecorino in there because I prefer pecorino over Parmesan, probably maybe a Parmesan crisp on top. We've talked about that. Probably if I do the second bake at the end, I'll probably put a little bit of maybe mozzarella even on top, just sort of in a pattern to crisp on the very top of it and go a bit bubbly, make it a bit unusual for the topping. But whether I decide to make the ring a little bit more puffy so I can cut it into 3 and have a middle layer of choux I haven't worked out yet, or make a extra bit of choux which I flatten out a little bit and make a lasagna layer, because I feel like if I'm going to make it a lasagna, I need the middle layer. So I feel like I need to make one extra bit of choux, which I sort of compact a little bit like I'm making a palmier, and do it that way. And then make the layers for lasagna.
Sounds like the world's most decadent sloppy Joe.
Oh, that's the idea.
May I suggest something? So what if you make tiny profiteroles?
Yeah.
And fill them with bechamel?
Yep.
And they become bechamel bombs.
Ooh, I'm here for a bechamel bomb.
Oh, so instead of like a flat disc of thing, because that could also be quite difficult to do. Like I know that like there's been this trend lately of like baking like cubic choux. But yeah, like little bechamel bombs and kind of dot that around the inside.
Yes. So when you cut it and you cut the bechamel bomb, it just oozes out with this.
That could be something.
Like a stuffed cheese crust pizza.
Yes. That could definitely be something. Well, have a look at that. But so the plan is for my one is going to be basically a Paris-Brest lasagna. Again, will it work? Who the hell knows? But we're going to try it and we're going to put it up on the Instagram. So you either get to see me succeed or fail. Either way, it's up to you. And it's going to be really funny to watch. So in terms of what we've come up with in this, I think we've come up with some really cool ideas. What I want you to do as well, if you've listened to this, obviously, is let us know in the comments on Instagram, on Twitter, wherever it happens to be. Probably Instagram. It's where most people tend to put the comments. On Instagram, let us know which of these bakes you'd really like to see. Which of these bakes really calls out to you. I'm interested to see if some of the weird ones call out to you. That'll be saying a lot about some people. But please give us
Inferno.
The Dante's Inferno is amazing. I really want that to happen. And again, hell, we know 31st
I think it's going to happen. Yeah,
31st of January. You like a challenge. Look, I feel like we've done a great service to Canadian. Because what I will say about this series of Canadian, to sort of be semi-serious, but also not quite, is Canadian, one of the reasons Canadian works so well is that they're not afraid to take chances, and the judges are not afraid to reward people who take chances. And I feel like a lot of this sort of exercise that we've done here demonstrates the chances you can take when you're planning out bakes, and you don't have to go with, again, not to beat up on British while it's already dead, but you don't have to like make the same 5 bakes the same way that everyone's always made them. You can do something out of the box. You can do something a bit unusual, but not be unusual for the sake of being unusual, but you can do it because it actually might work. And I think that's what Canadian rewards. And I think that's sort of what we've done tonight. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Well, like coming up with fun flavors or just an interesting concept is something that I always like doing with my baking. If I'm like coming up with a recipe or whatever. Like I've got a few recipes that I'm just like, yeah, sure. What I make the same thing every time because I'm just like, I know that it pleases a crowd. Like I'm in the middle of my Christmas baking and I've got a freezer full of gingerbread dough.
Yep.
The same gingerbread dough that was too spicy for Maggie. But yeah, like that idea of generating ideas, I think is so much fun. Whether or not we ever end up actually baking them isn't the point.
No, although again, I think people out there might want to try. I know a couple of people who listen who like baking things they see on the show, so they might have a go at some of these. No,
I think it's nice to also see the cultural references, different different versions of Bake Off.
Yep.
And also, what I like doing when I watch those kind of shows is sort of think about how can I adapt that to what I've got around me. Like, how can I be inspired by my own surrounding and whatever I'm seeing on TV? So the idea of just being inspired is fantastic to me.
And it's that idea too of, and we talked about it. We talked about it when we talked to Tom on the podcast earlier in your season. We talked about that idea of, especially with Indigenous representation, visualization, and being able to see that is important, and being able to see that sort of pathway. And I think one of the areas where said British has let itself down a little bit, but things like Canadian are very good at, and Australia is pretty good at it. Got a little bit to go, but it's a lot better than British is representing. These Canadian and Australian are better at representing different voices, different backgrounds, different communities, whereas British is very much Western European baking and Western European baking only. And when they do something else, it feels very tokenistic and thrown in. And we know of one thing they've baked, let's do that.
Do you mean
like,
the tortillas?
Yes, I mean tortillas.
like Canadians fancy dessert week. Like the things that they baked within that. There were a lot of Asian inspired ideas, but you compare that to say Japanese week on British. And yeah, you're right. It does feel tokenistic. Like I think they did the Kawaii cake as well that Canadian did for their first showstopper this season. Yeah, it's like you can take an idea, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it belongs
the
to
difference
a culture.
The difference was that they did it as a thing for this is Japanese culture, absolutely, and Japanese baking. Whereas it's more of a cultural reference, but it's not really. There's so many good Japanese baking options that they could have gone with. That they didn't. And I mean, if you remember in that one too, the first challenge they did in Japanese week was steamed buns, and everyone made Chinese ones. No one made Japanese.
Shokupan.
Yeah, well, we didn't get Japanese buns. So, and they openly admitted they were making Chinese ones, most of them. And it's like, well, it's Japanese week. What are you doing? But that's a lot of, and I find when I watch a lot of food television from the UK, there's still a lot of, because of distance and just sort of that Western European focus, there's still a lot of, they don't really understand a lot about Southeast Asia or any part of Asia in terms of the differences, the fact that you can't just say Asian flavors or Southeast Asian flavors, or even, for example, the one we always used to bring up with MasterChef was when people would go, oh, that's an Indian curry. And you're like, which part of India? Are we dealing with the North Indian curry? Are we dealing with something down closer to Sri Lanka and the Tamil region? Where are we dealing with? What sort of curry are we talking about? Because they're vastly different regions.
Well, like when I'm walking,
yeah.
Or like when I'm walking down the supermarket aisle and I still see Oriental noodles.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
I like how there's just like one international section. I was like,
yes. And by the way, in Australian supermarkets, the international section is more and more filled with goods from New Zealand, which is just, I think, hilarious. Is that it's becoming overwhelmed with that.
Pineapple chunks.
Look, it's rations. It's rations and Whittaker's chocolate, because that's not scary.
Whittaker's chocolate, though.
Whittaker's chocolate is amazing. Whittaker's chocolate is the bomb. I do highly recommend, if you've not had Whittaker's chocolate, go out there. It's the best thing to come out of New Zealand, and I include Dave Dobbin and Bakeoff out of that. So, look, I needed to get one shot in. I needed to get one in. This has been spectacular. This has been good fun. It's also been deeply overdue to get these two gentlemen on the podcast, and I've been telling them forever, As again, I've made absolutely no secret of. I talk to these two gentlemen all of the time, and at some point I went, we should probably record one of these, and I should probably get them on. So it's been a fucking delight, gentlemen. Absolute fucking delight to get you both on. Also, how excited are you for the Canadian version of this? Because I'm going to tell everyone straight up, because they've said yes, and if I tell everyone they can't back out, Nigel and Chi will be doing season 6 of the Great Australian Bake Off Rebaked. So,
Yeah,
like, both such delights. And look, I've got like, I really just want to be Nigel's friend. I just like, he just looks like he'd be such a nice friend, and we could have D&D campaigns.
well, there we go, Nigel. You said it out loud. Now you can listen to that and take it on board.
She's my long lost twin.
Yeah, you and Chi are very, yeah. Yes, that's perfect. There might even be, I'm just going to forward sizzle something here. There might even be another podcast coming in the near future, sort of not immediate future, but early next year. There might be something coming where we might get a couple of these bakers together. I'm just putting that out there into the universe. I'm not going to say too much more about it, but it might already be a planning thing. So this has been spectacular. Thank you very much, Nurman. Thank you very much, Aaron. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm still Chris. Christy is
I'm
off
still
having,
Christy.
Yeah, they're all still Christy. Christy is off having a lovely dinner with her sisters for her sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Michelle. And we will catch you all later.